I have to say, after seeing the most recent one, I have to admit, I really hope Universal does not make any more of these type of films. Well, hello again there, guys. Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer, here to share with you another one of my worst to best ranking videos. Now, with the release of the last Jurassic World Dominion film, which closes out that trilogy of Jurassic World films, that now gives us 6 Jurassic films, and I thought it would be a better time other than other to do my own personal ranking of which ones I think are worst to best. So if you happen to enjoy this little ranking of mine, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep track of me on all my future videos. And if you have any ideas that you would like me to see for future reactions or ranking videos or reviews in general, make sure to share those ideas also in the comments down below too. So as we go into this list, it's going to be pretty consistent. I would be surprised if any of your guys' lists are any different from mine. I'm sure there are going to be some differences, but I'm pretty sure that there's some spots that are going to be higher than most. So as we start with the number 6 spot, and without question, the worst Jurassic film, in my opinion, has to go to the most recent one in Jurassic World Dominion. This was not a good movie. This was not a good movie, and they hyped this film up like it was going to be the epic conclusion, and it just ended up crashing and burning. I mean, there were just so many problems with this film. I mean, they had this idea that they had been building up since the first Jurassic World film, and the idea of could humans and dinosaurs actually coexist? Would there be problems? What challenges would have to be faced? And I would say that the opening intro did do a solid idea of how Jurassic dinosaurs have impacted our world. But then that plotline completely is forgotten about, and now you have two groups of characters that are doing 2 different storylines. And by the end, they're supposed to converge into this epic conclusion. Now, I did think it was nice that they brought the original 3 from the first Jurassic Park film and gave them their own storyline. But then you have Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard doing their own storyline, and neither one is really all that interesting. And it just feels like Jurassic World Dominion had 2 different movies that they had no idea how to make them work, because you're constantly jumping back and forth between the 2 of them, and neither of them were very interesting. I mean, you think that the dinosaurs are the main threat. You would think that. But then there's this stupid story arc with these locusts. And I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? And then it just gets so stupid that Chris Pratt's character keeps using this stupid hand trick on like any dinosaur he sees. Now, I understand in the first Jurassic World film, they established that that little hand trick worked for 4 specific raptors that he had trained since birth. So to see him keep doing this on every dinosaur he sees and it working to a point just killed the movie for me. It was like, okay, that man should be dead so many times over, and this film should end. In fact, I think had he been killed earlier on, the film might have been better, because then there would have actually been some real stakes. So this movie did not work. I hated this film. It is without question the worst, not only Jurassic World film, but the worst Jurassic film to date. And I really hope that I don't want them to make any more after this. Or at least give a serious, I don't expect to see another one of these for like 10, 15 years. So, yeah, Jurassic World Dominion, by far the worst film in the series. Going into number 5, I have Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Now, it had an interesting concept in the idea that a volcano on the Jurassic Park island is about to erupt, and they want to evacuate all the dinosaurs and get them off there because reasons. And though they had an interesting concept, I just don't think it was executed as well as it could. And there were just a lot of extra ideas and movie plots that I just don't think mixed very well. I mean, there was this whole arc with genetic cloning, and they cloned this human girl, and I was like, why was that necessary? And then they created like this new dinosaur, which was kind of like a psychopathic killer, which I will say this, I did admire that the main antagonist dinosaur for the film actually kind of had a little bit of a personality, but it makes it kind of inconsistent with the rest of the main threat dinosaurs throughout the whole series, because they're supposed to be kind of acting like dinosaurs and animals, and this one was just kind of sadistic, like kind of torturing and like just stalking his targets. And I thought that was just a little bit weird. I thought that, visually it had some good CGI. There were like a few action set pieces I thought were okay, but overall the story was just kind of underwhelming. It was another example, I think, I think past the first Jurassic World film, I think the problem is they had ideas, they just don't know how to make them work in a much wider scale, or how to build off what happened in the previous film, which is something Dominion did even worse. So while I also don't really like Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I don't dislike it as much as Dominion. There's definitely a few little good things in this film, just not enough to the point where I would want to see this a second time, which is why it's easily to have to take number 5 spot on my list. Going into number 4 is gonna surprise some people, but I'm actually gonna have to go with Jurassic Park 3. Now, I actually did see this in theaters when it first came out when I was much younger, and I would say I'm probably one of the few individuals that doesn't hate this movie. I don't think it's that great, but I'll give it credit. It did happen to try to tell a different story than the first 2 Jurassic Park films. Now, the main story for this one is that a divorced couple's kid ends up getting trapped on one of the Jurassic Park islands. So they go to Alan Grant and trick him into taking them to the island in order to help them find their son. But shortly after arriving, their plane crashes, they get stuck there, and now they need to find a way to get off the island, and a couple of other things are happening in the background, which makes their, let's say, little visit to the second Jurassic Park island a little bit more difficult. Now, I will say this. I think that some of the visuals for this film very much still hold up. I really like the Spinosaurus. Now, a lot of people did not like the Spinosaurus, but I actually really did like the Spinosaurus. It's actually easily, because of this film, easily became one of my top 5 favorite just dinosaurs in general. And a lot of people were kind of upset about the Spinosaurus and T-Rex fight, because if you're old enough to remember, they were really hyping that fight up and all the promotional material leading up to release of that film. And the fight really didn't live up to expectation, and it was also a little bit more disappointing. The Spinosaurus, the main antagonist, the main threat of this entire film, was kind of hardly in the movie. I think the Spinosaurus had maybe less than 10 minutes of screen time, but I will say that when it did show up, it was effective. And I think the Velociraptors in this film are without question my favorite in terms of actually presenting a real threat in the entire series. So while Jurassic Park 3 is not a perfect film or even a great film, it is something that I do occasionally go back and watch if I don't have anything else to do, and think it's a solid watch. But it does have its flaws, but heck, it does have its high points, and that's why I would easily put it in the number 4 spot on my list. Going into number 3, I'm going to have to give it to the first Jurassic World film. Now, after Jurassic Park 3 had ended, I was very cautious if a kind of semi-rebooted series for the Jurassic series would actually work, because as far as I could tell, the first Jurassic World film kind of ignores the events of Jurassic Park 3 and the Lost World of Jurassic Park, and just kind of follows the events of the first film, in which in this film, they eventually did get the park open. They turned it into some kind of resort where people can actually interact with dinosaurs in this big, just glorious zoo. And Chris Pratt's character is kind of like a trainer of raptors, and he's just like a survivalist, I would say. But it appears that the scientists at Jurassic World have genetically engineered a new dinosaur by mixing the DNA of a Velociraptor and a T-Rex into the Indominus Rex. And when it happens to outsmart, its caretakers, it gets out of its cage, starts causing havoc, and now everyone on Jurassic World, all the humans, are in danger and need to find a way to get off. I will say this. I give this movie a lot of credit for being very, very different in terms of tone than the original 3 films. I actually think that the performances from all the main actors was really great. I think this one is, without question, Chris Pratt's strongest performance, at least in this series. It seemed like this is the one that he was most invested in. Seeing his interaction with the Raptors, I thought was actually a pretty great idea, and it led to a lot of real cool visual scenes. I thought the Indominus Rex was actually pretty threatening, and the fact that it took multiple different dinosaurs kind of semi-working together to actually take it out, spoiler alert. And I did think that the side stories were actually okay. I didn't find them as annoying as other people did. And overall, I thought it was just a great time at the theaters. I definitely saw this at least 2 or 3 times in theaters and had a great time. And yeah, it was without question the strongest out of the Jurassic World films, and which is why I would happily put it as a number 3 spot on my list. Going into number 2 is a movie that a lot of people also, just like Jurassic Park 3, don't really like all that much, and that has to go to the Lost World of Jurassic Park. Now, many people believe that after the first one, they should have just never made another Jurassic film, but if you want to acknowledge how successful the first film was in terms of what it was able to achieve, not only financially, but just, in terms of cinema history, you would know that you can't have a property or have a film that successful and that impactful and not want to continue its story. So I at least acknowledge the reality of how Hollywood works and how business works. So the story for this one is very different from the first film. What happens is Dr. Malcolm ends up having to go back to the island because apparently there's this corporate guy who's related to John Hammond who wants to take dinosaurs off of the island and transport them into a zoo on the mainland and, hopefully make some profits. And they kind of want to show that we should just leave these dinosaurs alone. And Malcolm's girlfriend happens to already be on the island, and so that's why he goes there to try to get her back. But while they're there, things go totally crazy. They end up getting stuck on the island. They have to team up with these group of kidnapped mercenaries. Well, I guess they're mercenaries. And then when they get off the island and back to the mainland, a T-Rex gets out and starts going havoc all over I believe it's San Diego, because, just San Diego in general, and pretty much hope that things don't get too crazy. Now, again, this film was not as great as the first film. It did lack a little bit in content, but I think the fact that it did tell a secondary story, very different from the first film, tried a lot of new ideas, I give it a lot of credit for. And the reason I like it a little bit more than, say, something like Jurassic World is I think I like the characters more, and there's definitely a lot more significant moments that I thought were actually really good. Like that entire scene in the trailer with the 2 T-Rexes knocking it over the cliff, I think that is probably one of the most suspenseful scenes in the entire Jurassic series. And there were a lot of really great moments that I still think are pretty iconic, and that's why this is definitely, without question, the one that I've seen the second most, which is why it holds the number 2 spot on my list. Well, we all know what number 1 is. I think that anybody that does a list like this, number 1 is going to be consistent across the board. And obviously the greatest and best Jurassic Park film has to go to the very first one. This one is just incredible. It still holds up to this day. When I first saw this when I was a kid, it blew my mind. Just like anyone else, whether you were a kid or a teenager or adult, when you saw this film in theaters, it blew everyone's minds. This was such a massive step in cinema in terms of using computer graphics to actually make it appear that dinosaurs had come back. I mean, this easily would go down as probably one of the top 50 greatest films that was ever made. Definitely one of Spielberg's best films that he ever made. The story basically follows this group of people that get transferred to this island because they want to open up and show people that, heck, we've been able to actually bring back dinosaurs and genetically engineer them, and we want to see if we should let this open to the public. And shortly after going on this little tour, a storm picks up and things go badly wrong, and then all hell breaks loose, and these good people simply do everything they can in order to not get eaten by dinosaurs. And there's just so many great iconic moments. This is just such an incredible film. You can't say enough great things as for why this film is simply incredible. It still remains the standard to which all future Jurassic Park and World films were compared to. And not one of them. We've had 5 films after this first film came out, and not one of them was able to even reach the level of this first film. It is simply a classic. Some people say it's a masterpiece. It is just an incredible film, and without question, it is the greatest Jurassic Park film that ever has been or ever will be made. I seriously doubt we will ever get any sort of movie, even involving dinosaurs, that will reach the level of excellence that the first film of Jurassic Park pulled off, which is why it's number 1 on not only my list, but probably everybody's list. So now that you guys know my ranking of these 6 main Jurassic films, how would you guys rank them? Share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.